It's Thursday, October 5th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. Let's grab our nighttime skywatching info from earthsky.org. Tonight, that full moon you'll see ascending in the east after sunset is the Northern Hemisphere's harvest moon. Yep, as the old song says, shine on, harvest moon. Over the years, we've seen lots of informal uses of that term, harvest moon. Some people in the Northern Hemisphere call the full moons of September and October all by that name, and that's fine. For the next few months around the autumn equinox, both September and October, for us in the Northern Hemisphere, that time of moonrise is close to the time of sunset for several evenings in a row, around the time of full moon. It's as if there are a few full moons in a row during each autumn month. Astronomers are scientists, though, and it's no surprise that to them the term full moon or the name harvest moon means something very specific. To astronomers, the harvest moon is the full moon closest to the September equinox, and the full moon comes at that instant when the moon is 180 degrees from the sun in ecliptic, or celestial longitude. In 2017, this equinox took place, as you remember, on September 22nd. The closest full moon to the autumn equinox reaches the crest of its full phase October 5th, that's today, at 1840 UTC. For everybody living in the continental United States, the moon turns precisely full during the daytime hours Thursday today. By United States clocks, that full moon instant comes at 2:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, for instance, 1:40 p.m. Central Daylight Time, 12:40 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, 11:40 Pacific Daylight Time, and on and on. There'll be a chart if you want to further investigate. But don't worry too much about that instant of full moon, or the time on your clock, or even where you are on the globe. No matter where you live worldwide, you're going to see a full-looking moon shining from dusk till dawn on the night of October 5th. Tonight's October harvest moon rises in the east around sunset, climbs highest up around midnight, and sets in the west just about sunrise. At the vicinity of full moon, the moon, as always, stays out all night long. So, is tonight's moon the harvest moon? Well, according to Deborah Bird, who writes this for earthsky.org, it sure is, at least for the Northern Hemisphere. Meanwhile, for you gentle listeners in the Southern Hemisphere, it's the first full moon of spring. And so, says this article, what's the big deal about the harvest moon? Why are the full moons special in autumn? Around the time of the autumn equinox, the ecliptic, or the path of the sun, moon, and planets, makes a narrow angle with the horizon at sunset. Every full moon rises around the time of sunset, and on average, each successive moonrise comes about 50 minutes later daily. But on September and October evenings, because of that narrow angle of the ecliptic on the horizon, the moon rises sooner than average. And instead of rising 50 minutes later in the days after full moon, the waning gibbous moon might rise only 35 minutes later or thereabouts. And for several days in a row at mid-northern latitudes, that's going to be the case. At far northern latitudes, for example, Fairbanks, Alaska, the moon rises about 15 minutes later for days on end. That fact was important to people in earlier times. For farmers, for instance, bringing in the harvest before the days of tractor lights, it meant there was no long period of darkness between sunset and moonrise for several days after full moon. And that meant farmers could work in the fields bringing in those crops by moonlight, hence the name harvest moon. At mid-northern latitudes, watch for that harvest moon to shine from dusk till dawn for the next few or even several days. And here's the bottom line. Enjoy that 2017 harvest moon. Oh, let it shine on. We can't leave earthsky.org without giving you this headline. Is dust what's dimming Tabby's star? Deborah Bird wrote this for earthsky.org. Astronomers say they found a smoking gun that rules out the idea of that energy harvesting megastructure, or Dyson sphere, built by an alien civilization surrounding Tabby's star. Deborah Bird writes, have you been following that strange case of KIC 8462852? Well, if you've been listening to UFO Headline News here on Inception Radio Network, we have. It's a star that behaves like no other ever seen. A star whose dramatic and weird dips in brightness have caused some astronomers to speculate about a possible Dyson sphere, a megastructure around that star, possibly built by an advanced civilization with the goal of large-scale energy harvesting. The Kepler Space Telescope has seen Tabby's star dim up to 20% over a matter of days. But the star also has a much subtler, longer-term enigmatic dimming trend, with one continuing today. On October 4th, 2017, a study was announced suggesting an uneven dust cloud moving around the star as the cause of the long-term dimming. No Dyson sphere needed. But is it true? The astronomers who published the study point to a smoking gun. They say their observations, which used the Spitzer and Swift space missions, as well as the Belgian Astral AB Iris Observatory, found less dimming in the infrared light from the star than in its ultraviolet light. So their statement explains it thus. Quote, any object larger than dust particles, such as the great beams and girders of a Dyson sphere, would dim all wavelengths of light equally when passing in front of Tabby's star. End quotes. Enter Juan Meng at the University of Arizona, Tucson. Meng is the lead author of the new study, which also has as co-author none other than Tabitha Boyajian from Yale. She's the astronomer for whom Tabby's star is named. She also made this star famous. There's a 2016 TED Talk about it. You can find a link later at ufoheadlinenews.com. The study's published in the peer-reviewed Astrophysical Journal. Here's what Meng says, quote, this pretty much rules out the alien megastructure theory, as that could not explain the wavelength-dependent dimming. We suspect instead there is a cloud of dust orbiting the star with a roughly 700-day orbital period. The astronomer's statement explained why they consider their explanation, that idea that the dimming is caused by dust, as the best one. Quote, we experience the uniform dimming of light often in everyday life. If you go to the beach on a bright sunny day and sit under an umbrella, that umbrella reduces the amount of sunlight hitting your eyes in all wavelengths. But if you wait for the sunset, the sun looks red because the blue and ultraviolet light is scattered away by tiny particles. This new study suggests the objects causing the long-period dimming of Tabby's star can be no more than a few micrometers in diameter, about 1/10,000th of an inch. End quotes. They explained that they observed Tabby's star in ultraviolet using Swift and in infrared using Spitzer. These observations took place from January to December of 2016. Supplementing the space telescopes, researchers also observed the star in visible light during that same period using the Astral AB Iris. That's a public observatory that features a 27-inch wide, 68-centimeter reflecting telescope. It's located near the Belgian village of Zillebeke. Here's what that statement said, quote, based on the strong ultraviolet dip, we determined the blocking particles must be bigger than interstellar dust, small grains that could be located anywhere between Earth and the star. Such small particles could not remain in orbit around the star because pressure from the starlight would drive them further into space. Dust that orbits a star is called circumstellar dust. It's not so small that it would fly away, but it's also not big enough to uniformly block light in all wavelengths. This is currently considered the best explanation, although others are possible. End quotes. In their study, these astronomers are addressing the long-term dimming of Tabby's star. They did not address the shorter-term dimming events that happened in that 3-day spurt in 2017. They also did not confront the mystery of the major 20% dips in brightness that Kepler observed while studying the Cygnus field on its primary mission. In other words, more mysteries remain. But, asks Deborah Bird, who wrote this, isn't that always the case? So here's the bottom line. A new study published in the Astrophysical Journal on October 4th suggests dust as the source for the long-term dimming of Tabby's star. Those other dimming trends, well, they just remain unexplained. We've gathered up a bunch of those unexplained sightings from UFOstalker.com first-person eyewitness accounts. Let's begin in Glasgow, Scotland. That's MUFON case number 87148. The date of this sighting is 10/5/2017. It got a same-day report. Here's what our witness offers in summary. October 5th, 3 flashes, bright white light moving across sky near Dunblane, Scotland. The sighting specifics offer a viewing distance unknown, an altitude over 500 feet underneath a cloud cover. The sighting duration was a mere 3 seconds, so the object features, understandably, are called none and unknown. The object flight path was a path with directional change, and the object shape is described as square and rectangular. There doesn't seem to be any mention of meteorology, so we'll weather the weather whatever. Here's the account of the event. It was the evening of the 5th of October 2017, just before 8 p.m. We were driving north on the A9 from Stirling towards Perth in Scotland. It had been raining, but it was dry at the time of this sighting. There were some dark cloud covers, but this was breaking up. There were breaks in the cloud, and a full moon was even visible. This sighting happened at 1955. It was a brief event, over in a matter of seconds. I noticed a bright white light in the sky above while I was looking at this full moon. Initially, I didn't think it was anything in particular, just that it was a bright light. This sighting consisted of 3 separate bright flashes, moving from left to right. And as I've said, this entire event was over very quickly, in about 3 seconds. This object, or light, was composed of 2 rectangular shapes right next to each other. The object flashed once to the right, once above, and once slightly to the left in a shallow kind of V-shaped pattern. It left the impression of the object moving almost instantaneously in time from one location to the next. I felt excited. I felt that I was witnessing something strange, something unusual and unexplainable. The word UFO sprang to mind, even if just because it was unexplainable. It was too fast to be any kind of aircraft, such as a plane or helicopter. It was too low, too large, too bright, and moving way too fast to be a star or the International Space Station. Its movements were quick, flashes of light appearing at different parts of the sky in quick succession, traveling as if on a path. There did not appear to be any trails. I eventually lost sight of this object because it appeared to go behind cloud cover, and it did not appear after that 3rd flash. 3rd time's the charm. And why the flashes? Why make yourselves apparent to humans here on Earth if you don't wish to be seen? Propulsion system? We don't know. It's anybody's guess. With a slight juxtaposition of geolocation, now let's head from Scotland to Yonkers in New York. That's the setting for MUFON sighting number 86950. The date of this sighting is 9/23/2017. The date submitted, 9/26/2017. In summary, dot size, green flash overhead, high altitude, changes to red flashes, flies off southeast. Sighting specifics give us some clues. A viewing distance unknown, an altitude unknown as well. The sighting duration was 10 minutes. The object features, well, you might have guessed they are also unknown. The flight path was hovering and then path. The object shape, other. If you're wondering about the weather in Yonkers at the time of this event, we can clear that up. The maximum temperature was 86 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature 78 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius. And the minimum temperature was 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius. Those visibility factors, maximum, mean, and minimum, all stood the same, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. There was nothing abnormal about the weather.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Weather conditions over Yonkers. Here's the sighting event itself in the first-person words of our witness. On the night of September 23rd, 2017, in southern Westchester County, New York, near the NYS Thruway, I was sitting on my back porch listening to music. It was around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It was such a clear night that when I looked directly up at the sky, I could see a few stars. I saw this one star that was brighter than the others directly above me. It was slightly north of 4 other stars next to it. Approximately 5 minutes went by. I looked up again. That's when I saw a green light. It was the size of a dot, only slightly larger than that bright star I was looking at just a few minutes before. This appeared to be very high in altitude in the night sky, probably thousands of feet up in the air, well past the airspace of regular air travel. It was to the left of that bright star that was slightly north of the other stars in the sky and directly over my head. And this green dot was flashing. It was a green color, as vivid as the green in a traffic light. This flash was 1 flash per second. I went inside to call my neighbor so I could get a second witness, but she wasn't home. So I came back outside, thinking this object had gone away, but it was still there. It then moved to the right slightly, blocking that bright star. The green flashing dot all of a sudden then changed to a red flashing dot, same tempo of flashes. The red color was just as vivid as stoplight red. For approximately 1 minute, then, it flashed red and then slowly drifted east, all the while flashing. It moved east until the tall oak trees in my yard blocked my vision of this object in the sky. And that's it. No punchline, no point in hanging around. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. But our witness definitely saw something. Green, then red, and flashing. From New York to Georgia, to the city of Warner Robins, where this sighting took place. MUFON gave it a case number 87140. The date of this sighting is the 3rd of October, 2017. It was reported October 5th. Here's what our witness offers by way of summary. Bright, star-sized light. Grew dim and bright. Had bluish-green lights, possibly black round body. 2 of them. Let's check out the sighting specifics in this case. The viewing distance was 101 feet to 500 feet initially, and then unknown. The altitude, treetop, 500 feet or less. Object features are described as other and unknown. The flight path is described as a path that included directional change, and then a path that included hovering. And according to our witness, the object shape does not apply. Just a brief glimpse of the meteorology involved. The maximum temperature over Warner Robins, Georgia for this event was 72 degrees Fahrenheit, 22 degrees Celsius. The visibility factors were standard, all of them 10 miles, 16 kilometers. No abnormal weather, in other words. So let's hear the account. I live 80 miles south of Atlanta, 1/4 mile from Robins Air Force Base. So I'm used to air traffic all day and night. I was sitting in my backyard last night, and I looked to my northwest, where I see a bright star-shaped thing. I couldn't tell much about the direction it was heading at first, but it looked like it was rising over the tree line, rising in a vertical motion. I then realized it was actually coming towards me, and I was sitting to the southeast of this thing. I watched it pass over me. It seemed like the light was floating just over the treetops. I think I may have seen a round black silhouette around the light. I can't confirm it, though. There were also bluish-green lights on this, almost as though they were wings, but I saw no wings. After it went over, I looked to the north and see another one. And then, besides that, there appeared to be a third, or possibly the return of the first one. I didn't hear a sound, and due to being so close to the base, well, there are multiple bans on drones in this area, and I can't find any other report on this at all. Very soon after these lights were all gone, some sort of aircraft took off from the base. However, that could have just been training. I saw this again tonight, and I also heard no sound from the object. I want to also mention one more time, drones are banned here. So, we gentle listeners can tally up the fact that this is in proximity 1/4 mile from Robins Air Force Base, and a prohibition, understandably, on drones in the area. So perhaps it begs the question, what's going on at Robins Air Force Base in the state of Georgia? Let's zoom into the Northern Territory, shall we? The state of Michigan, city of Luther. That's the setting for MUFON sighting number 87079. It's a slightly older sighting, the month of August, the 6th to be specific, this year, 2017. It wasn't reported until October 2nd. The summary says, seemed small, oval-shaped. There are photos that accompany this account. You can check them out later at ufoheadlinenews.com. Do your own home analysis. The sighting specifics offer a viewing distance listed as unknown. The altitude was treetop. The features are described as other. The flight path is described as stationary. And the shape of the object, as we've heard, is oval. The maximum temperature for this event was 78 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius, dropping down to a minimum of 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius. All of the visibility factors were standard, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. Nothing abnormal meteorologically. Here's the account, first person from our witness. We stopped to take some pictures of some nice deer that were eating as they were going over a dirt berm. I took 4 photos of these deer. The second photo is the only one that shows the object. All these photos were taken from the same place at the same time, just a few seconds apart. I did not notice what was in the photo until I looked at these photos a couple of days later. There were 3 of us in the truck. I took photos from the front passenger seat, and a buddy of mine took 2 photos out of the driver's window. There was nothing different about his 2 photos. The other guy was sitting in the back seat watching the deer, but he never saw that thing around the deer. Perhaps you could shed some light on what this is in photo number 2. Thanks, Jay. Oh, Jay, shedding some light. Yup, devoutly to be sought. But we have no idea what this is. Gentle listeners, take a look for yourselves. See if you can shed any light. And if you have ideas, there is a place underneath every UFOstalker.com entry where you can leave your comment, your suggestions. Let's head from that mitten-shaped state of Michigan to the, well, we could say UFO-shaped state of Arizona, but that's a stretch. Lots of sightings there, however, and here's one more. It's MUFON case number 87088. The date of this sighting is 10/1/2017. It was reported 10/2/2017. Here's the summary. 2, one cone-shaped and reflective, stationary, and another, a globe-mottled one. It turned. There were 3, and then all 3 vanished. Under the categories that include sighting specifics are witness lists of viewing distance of 20 feet or less initially, and then 500 feet to 1 mile, and eventually unknown. The altitude was 500 feet or less, and then later over 500 feet and underneath a cloud cover. Over 500 feet without the cloud cover. Later, it's complicated. The entire sighting duration took place over 2 hours and 30 minutes. The object features are described as a patterned surface. The flight path, stationary, and then a path that included directional change. And this object was shaped like a cone. There's a rather truncated meteorological report. It simply notes the maximum temperature, which was 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 degrees Celsius. The mean temperature, 78 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees Celsius. It seemed to go something like this. At about 5:45 p.m., a neighbor called me out to my third-floor balcony to watch what he'd been seeing. I grabbed my binoculars, and I sighted an inverted teardrop-shaped object, highly reflective, silver. It appeared to have a canoe-shaped object suspended beneath it. It never moved. As the sun began to set, this object turned orange-red, and then, at full dark, it disappeared. It was in the northeast. It was at a great but unknown altitude. After settling in to observe this object, we noticed 3 circular objects flying quickly, horizontally, south to north. These objects seemed to be about 500 feet in altitude. They were a mottled, dull red, orange, and brown. One of these objects seemed to roll and become flat, and the group then suddenly vanished. I'm a retired Air Force Airborne Command and Control Superintendent. My neighbor who initially spotted this is retired United States Navy. This morning, he told me that a third neighbor had seen this single silver object and photographed it with his iPhone. I have not yet spoken with him or seen that photo, but both my neighbor Bill and I will speak to anybody if requested to do so. Good hunting. And by anybody, we're pretty sure he means MUFON and UFOstalker.com. Good hunting indeed, tracking that wild and elusive beast known as the UFO. What we're tracking is the clock, which tells us, with its ceaseless ticking, we gotta go, because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at UFOheadlinenews.com. Loving kindness. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15%.